Watching Python tutorials does not make you a programmer. Building things does. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you 5 small Python projects that actually teach you to code. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to create a number guessing game. And the first thing we're going to do is import the random module. Next, we're going to generate a random number. We'll call it secret, and let's give it a random.randint. That'll get a whole integer, and we'll do anywhere between 1 and 100. Next, we'll track how many attempts the user tries. We'll do that with an S, attempts. And then we'll print a little message here. I am thinking of a number between 1 and 100. Okay, so now we're going to make the primary loop. We'll just print some output here. Simple output to prompt the user. Next, we need a loop that is going to allow the user to make multiple guesses. So what I'm going to do is use a while loop, and I'll say while true. And we'll break out of this later when the user guesses the number correct. First thing we'll do is get the user's guess. So we're going to call it guess text is equal to input. Sorry, that's input. And inside of this, we'll write a message, and we'll say your guess. Add a space there. And let's just do some error handling and make sure it's actually a number, because what if they pass a letter, for example? So if not guess text dot is digit. It's a nice little method that we have here. So we can quickly check if it is a whole number. We'll print out a little message here and say, please type a whole number. And then we'll use continue. What continue does is it starts the next iteration of our while loop. Cast from string to an int. So let's assign the guess as equal to int. And we're going to say guessed text. So we're going to take that string value, 42, and cast it to an int 42. So 42 string will become the integer value 42. And then let's increment our attempts. All right, so now we're going to compare the guess, and we're going to say if guess is greater than secret, let's print too high. That'll give the user a clue. Now, what I'm going to do some Visual Studio Code shortcuts here. I'm going to hit Shift Alt down arrow, and that copies my line down one. I'll press up arrow and enter, backspace, and I'll say elif guess is less than secret. And I'm using tab completion here. And I'll say too low. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same kind of clone, Shift Alt, and I'll say else. So if it's not too high and it's not too low, then they guessed it right. You guessed the correct number in, and we're going to convert this to an F string. I'll explain that in a second if you don't know what that is, but let's just wrap attempt here and say guesses, period. And to make it an F string, I'm just going to add F here. And what that allows me to do is pass in variable values inside of these braces. So now that we've done that, we need to break the loop. So we're going to say break. All right, so let's go ahead and give this a run. I'm going to hit Control backtick in Visual Studio Code to get my console, and we're going to execute script.py. So I'm going to press enter. And it says, I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 100. So type in 25. I'm too low. 50. Let's go to 75. 90. Okay, 90 is too high. And 80 was the correct number. That's kind of crazy. I got it in 5 guesses. Okay, so that is our number guessing game. Good job. Let's move on to the next one, which is going to be a password generator. So first thing we're going to do is import secrets and string. Okay, now we're going to write a couple of functions here. The first one's going to be generate password. Oops. And this will we're going to define a length. And by default, we'll assign it to 16. And we'll say use underscore symbols equals true. And let's just do a little opening quote here. We'll say build a random password of the given length. So let's get our characters. So we're going to say start with letters and it's going to be A through Z, then capital A through Z, and then digits. So 0 through 9. Oops, if I can type that correctly. There we go. So characters equals string.ASCII letters plus string.ASCII, dot digits, that is. All right, now we're going to say if use symbols is true, characters is going to be plus equals string.punctuation. And that will add all of the special characters. And we'll add a comment up here, add letters and digits. Okay, next we're going to return. So we're going to say return, and we're going to join. So we're going to join them with no separator here. That's what we're doing with this open and close block. And we're going to say join secrets dot choice, and we're going to pass in characters. So whatever characters are available, and we're going to say for in range length. So what this means is for this number, whatever this is, in our case, it's 16 by default. I want you to do a loop X amount of times, and I don't care about the I counter. That's why we're using the underscore. We could say for I in range, but we're never going to reference it later, so we're just going to use an underscore. This underscore is a signal that to the reader or whoever is writing the code that we don't care about what this value is. We just want to make sure that it runs for the number 16 times. So we're going to grab a choice from any of our available characters 16 times, and then we're going to return it. Okay, so let's go ahead and just check on this real quick. So what I'm going to do is define our main function here. So if name equals underscore main, all right, this is going to be our main entry port of our script. I'm going to say new underscore password equals generate underscore password, right? And we don't need to specify a length, but we can do that here if we'd like. So I'm just going to say length is equal to 16. And then let's print the new password. So print, and let's do an F string, new password, and it's going to be new underscore password. So let's go ahead and run our password generator. And here we get a new password that is created. So we can run this as many times as we want, and we will get a new password as desired. Now, one way that I would like to see you expand this is allow the user to pass a length at the command line. So accept an argument of length, and maybe I could pass in a 64 character password or something along those lines. And this video is sponsored by us, Server Academy. We have a fully revamped Python course that has interactive examples like this little cannon example. You can click it. You can run this in your browser right now. Interactive Python code down here at the top, and it interacts with a little game down here at the bottom. So if you are interested in taking your Python skills to the next level and doing fun little challenges like these to learn Python code, check out serveracademy.com/Python, and let's get on with the video. All right, so this next project is going to be flashcards. So we're going to define our flashcards to start. And we're going to use a dictionary. So I'm going to ask my questions. What keyword defines a function in Python? And I'll add a question mark and then colon, and we're going to give the answer. It's going to be the def variable. So I'm going to use my shift alt arrow down and just change these really quick. The next one, we're going to ask about comments. And then after that, we're going to ask about a data type, which is a list. So we'll make up the questions now. So let's say what symbol defines starts a comment in Python. And, that's starting to become redundant, so I'll just get rid of that. And then for this question, let's ask what type is, and then let's define a list here. Okay, so here's our flashcards that we have. Now, obviously, this is a great way to learn material because you are creating a function, a script that contains the data that you want to quiz yourself on. So you're getting a lot of kind of mental reps on whatever it is you're practicing, right? So now let's write the logic to actually give us and present the flashcards and give us a score. So start by just saying score is equal to 0. Okay, how many answers did the user get correct? Okay, and then we're going to say, let's print and say, we're going to print an F string, which simply means we, add an F before and allows us to insert variables. And let's say flashcard quiz, exclamation mark. And let's do a little variable here that will give us the length of the flashcards. So flashcards, and then we'll say cards \n. So what this is going to do is say, hey, flashcard quiz, there are 3 cards. So let's go ahead and just give this a run. And let me save it. There we go. Okay, so we have flashcard quiz, 3 cards, right? So as we add cards, if I added a bunch here and I press the up arrow, that number should increment. So let me just make them different so that they do indeed update. All right, so now there's 6 cards. Okay, so I'm gonna go and get rid of these because that was just for testing. All right, now let's go back down here and let's create a loop. Say go through each card one at a time. For question, correct underscore answer in flashcards.items. Okay, so what we're getting here is for each question and correct answer. This is the question and this is the correct answer in flashcards.items, right? So each of these would be an item. Let's say user underscore answer equals input. And we're going to do an F string here. We're going to have a prompt. So it's going to be question. And then let's say we're going to grab the question here, which again is the first block here. So we're grabbing this portion. So we're going to ask the user for their answer. So let's say that here, ask or prompt user for answer to the question. Okay, now if user underscore answer, and we're going to do a couple things to make it standardized. So we're going to strip any spaces. We're going to make it lowercase so they can't like have caps lock on and make the answer incorrect. And we're going to say correct answer dot lower. So, you know, this prevents something like, I'll explain in a second. This prevents them from answering something like a list, which is not equal to list, right? So, and if I wrote it up here with a capital L and I reverse these, it would also be incorrect. So it's better just to force the input to lowercase and our answer to lowercase. That's why we're using dot lower here. So make sure we're on an even playing field before we actually try to check the answer. So we'll print correct. Oops, got to spell it right here. And then we'll give them some score. So plus equals 1. And if not, then we'll say else, let's print an F string wrong. And then we'll say the answer is, and then inside of these braces, we'll put the correct answer, right? And we're grabbing that from up here. All right, so now finally, let's say print, and we'll do an F string. We'll do a new line just to make this a little pretty. You scored, and we'll say score out of, and we'll do another variable here. And we're going to use the length function here. So we'll say length of flashcards. So if you get all 3 correct, you'll score 3 of 3. If you get 2 correct, you'll score 2 of 3, etc. All right, so let's go ahead and give this a run. So I'm going to say, what keyword defines a function? I'll say def because that is correct. All right, so what symbol starts a comment? It is the hashtag here. I'm going to put an exclamation mark just to get it incorrect. And it tells me wrong, the correct answer, or the answer is that. Now, here is what is a list. I can put uppercase list and it will still say it's correct because, again, we are normalizing this answer to lowercase before we check it. And then it tells me I scored 2 out of 3. So that is the Python flashcard app. Good job getting through this one, and let's make the next one. Okay, this one is really cool. This is the automated file organizer. So what this is going to do is we have all these files in this directory. It's going to organize all of them for me nicely. So let's get started. What we're going to do is import sys, and then from pathlib, we're going to import path. All right, now let's go ahead and make a folder, a dictionary here. So folder, we're going to call this folder 4. That'll make sense in a bit. We're going to say .jpg, and we're going to map this to images.jpeg. And we're going to map this to the folder images. And let's map .png rather. And we're going to map that to the images folder. And then we're going to map .gif. And we'll map that to the images folder. So what we're doing here is this file type, stick it in the images folder. This file type, stick it in the images folder. Same for PNG and same for GIF. So now let's go down a line and we're going to do .pdf. So any of these should go in the PDFs folder. Now let's say .txt can go into documents. And let's do the same thing for .docx, which is going to be in a Google Documents folder. We'll put that in documents as well. And let's do some zip files. So zip, and that can go in archives. And same for .tar, that can go in archives. Okay, now that was a lot of typing, and I can see I made a mistake here already. Let's just go ahead and save it and clear my screen here. Just run it to make sure there's no errors. And right away I see one. So on line 2, we have an issue with how I imported pathlib. That is because path needs to be uppercase. Let's go ahead and clear that and let's run it again. All right, so now we got rid of all the errors. So we're good to go on that part. So let's create a function called organize now, and we're gonna say folder, and sometimes you might want to run this in dry run just to see what it's going to actually do. So we're going to say dry run equals false. So by default, it's going to run for real. If you want to flip it around so it doesn't run for real, you can change this to true. All right, now let's make a variable called folder, and that's going to be equal to path folder expand user. Okay, an expand user, it's basically going to turn the squiggly into your home path, which is your user's home directory. Okay, that'll make sense later. What we're going to do now is start with count 0. We're going to write a variable. Next, let's write a variable called count and assign it to the value 0. And let's go ahead and look at everything directly inside the folder. So for item in folder dot iterate directory, right? Okay, if not item dot is file. So if it is not a file, we're going to continue. So we're just going to skip over anything that's not a file, right? So you'll notice one of the things, we're trying to get our negatives out of the way first. So if this is not a file, we shouldn't even be worried about it. Let's skip right over it and don't do any processing, right? Getting your negatives out of the way first is a great practice. Let's look at subfolder name is equal to folder for. So we know we have a file. Now let's get the item suffix lower. So what we're doing here essentially is getting, I'm going to add a comment, look up the destination folder name by the file's extension. So if you remember correctly, or if you remember previously, we made a folder name based on the file extension. So JPG goes to images, and that's what we're doing here. So we're getting the subfolder name for this file type. So we have an item, it is not a folder. We're going to get the suffix, which is going to be like .jpg or .pdf, and we're going to look up the folder that it's destined for. All right, so now we have if subfolder name is none, continue. Look, this is an unknown file type. Don't touch it. Okay, so I'm actually going to put this above here, just so it's a little bit easier to read. So unknown file type, don't touch it. If the subfolder name is not in this map, we're not going to mess with it, okay? So again, getting negatives out of the way here. So the destination is going to be equal to folder, subfolder name, item.name. And then, all right, so let's add a nice little comment to make this all pretty. Define the destination. All right, now what we're going to do is if dry run. So if we're not really running this for real, we're simply going to print an F string, and we're going to say would move, and let's put item.name. and do a nice little arrow here. And we're going to say, we're going to do two expressions here, two variables, subfolder name, and then item.name. Okay, so now let's go ahead and test our code. And what I'm going to do is make our main entry point down here. So I'll say if name is equal to, gotta wrap this in here correctly. Okay, so now let's say target equals sys.argv if length sys.argv is greater than 1, else dot. And we're going to say preview is equal to dry dash run in dry dash run in sys.argv. Now we're going to organize, and we're going to say target and dry run equals preview. Now, what did we just do? So we're defining the target here. So you can pass in a path here. So say, for example, if we have an argument and we give a path that is greater than 1 character, then run it for that directory. Otherwise, use the current working directory. Next is if dry run is in our arguments, then we're going to assign that. So this variable will become true or false based on whether or not we pass this at the command line. So I'm going to go ahead and open this. I'm going to clear, and I'm going to run this with dry run. And I'll press enter. And I just realized here, this needs to be not name. This should be main. There we go. All right, so let's go ahead and run this. What I'm going to do is run pi. You can pass in a specific directory, or you can pass the current directory. I want to run this in dry run mode, and the way that our script is run right now, you cannot do both. So I'm just going to pass a dot to say the current working directory, and I'm going to say dry run and press enter. So this is what would have happened. It would have moved resume.docs to my documents. PDF would have gone in the PDFs, and it looks like I spelled archives wrong, which is fine. You can correct that on your own. And I have Server Academy logo, which would have gone in images, and the same for my cover. So I'm going to minimize that. I'll just scroll up and fix this really quick. What did I spell wrong? Here we go, archive. So we want these to all be the same. And in VS Code, you can just click it. It'll highlight anything that you have correct. So I had that a typo there. I went ahead and fixed that. All right, now to actually do the move, what we're going to do is add an else statement here. So if else, we're going to say destination.parent.make directory. And we're going to say exists, okay, equals true. And this will create subfolder if needed, right? And if it doesn't need it, it won't make it. Now, next, after that, we're going to do item.rename, and we're going to rename it to the destination. And then we'll print about it. So let's talk about what we did. So it is moved. Actually, what I'll do is I'll just go up here, Shift Alt down arrow, hold Alt and press the down arrow until I get to this line. Then I'll hit Shift Home and backspace. Control backspace, backspace, Control S. Those are my shortcuts that I like to do here. So I'm going to change this to move and moved. All right, the last thing we need to do is increase our count. So count equals 1. Okay, so now let's go down one more line and we'll do some final stats, and we'll say ending and then at the end here, we'll just print the count. So we're just going to say print an F string and say done, and we'll do our count files organized. And you might want to not say organized, because what if it was a dry run? So let's make a variable called ending, and let's say dry run, no changes made. And we'll close that, and then we'll say if dry run, else organized. And you might be wondering, what in the world does this do? Let's take this end and let's stick it down here. And instead of just putting organized there, we'll put the end. So we'll say done. I'm going to add a period here. And let's say there's 15 files, and it's either going to be organized or it's going to say dry run, no changes made. Let's go ahead and save it, clear it, run it again under dry run, and it said down here, done. 5 files, dry run, no changes made. Now, let's type out directory and look at all these files that I've got going on in here. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Let's run it again and get rid of the dry run operator. Now it actually did move all the files and it says it's organized them. So let's output our directory. And here we can see the only thing left are the Python scripts, which we have not moved because we didn't have them in our dictionary map. And we have these folders up here. So previously it looked like this with all the docx, the PDF zip file, all of that has now been organized in our directory. Now, one way I would like to see you expand this and improve on it is don't require this path to be specified. So for example, if I try to run this script and I just try to pass dry run, it's going to give an error because it says, hey, I don't even know how to get to this path that you're specifying here. And that's because it's trying to look up the path dry run, which obviously doesn't exist. So better argument handling would be one way that I would expand this script moving forward. So I would recommend there or challenge you to do that. Okay, it is the final script here. We're going to do the weather CLI and live API requests. So what we're going to do is first is import sys and requests. Request is a library that allows us to hit APIs. Now let's make a function called get weather, and we're going to pass in a value of city. So geo URL is going to be equal to this path. I'm going to go ahead and just copy and paste this in so I don't have to type this myself. You can find all of this information at serveracademy.com if you're looking for it. Link in description. I have all the source code up there. So what we're going to do is type in the geo, and that's going to be equal to request.get, and we're going to get the geo URL, right? And then we're going to pass a couple arguments. Now, we're going to say params is equal to, we're going to pass a dictionary. The name is going to be whatever city we pass in. And then we're going to pass count is equal to 1. And we're going to take that and select the JSON return from that request. So now let's do some error handling. If no matching place, stop with a clear message. Okay, so if results not in geo. So there was no results that we found. Let's go ahead and print an F string, and I'm going to say error could not find location, and we're going to do some escaped quotes here, and let's say city. So that'll wrap it in a quote that doesn't get taken literally so that we can wrap it on side of this set of quotes here. All right, then after we return that error message, we're just going to return. So again, we're doing our negatives first. Remember, always, if you can quit a function early, always quit a function early as it'll save you processing power. Next, we're going to get the place, and we're going to say geo, and results is going to be the first result. Let's grab the lat and longitude, and that's going to be equal to place latitude and place longitude. Okay, so we're assigning 2 variables on a single line, latitude and longitude. I'm assigning it to lat long. Okay. All right, so we've gotten the latitude and longitude. Now let's get the weather for that spot. So weather underscore URL. And again, I'm going to copy this myself. All right, there we go. And I'm going to get the data now. The data is going to be equal to, again, we're going to use the request library. We're going to say get, and we're going to say weather URL. And then we're going to pass some params, and we're going to do a multi-line this time. So we'll say latitude, and we're going to wrap this in quotes, and we're going to say is equal to lat, add a comma, and we're going to do the same thing, but change this to long. So again, I'm using that shortcut I've been using, which is left shift, left alt, up arrow, down arrow. And this is lon, just like that. Okay. And the next one is going to be current. And let's get temperature. Don't know why I said it like that, but I did. Wind underscore speed. And we're going to grab the JSON from this. So that allows us to interact with that object. All right, so we got some type of problem going on here. Let's just check our code and see what's going on. Equals, that's what I'm missing here. There we go. I got the latitude, longitude, and I've got the current. These are different parameters that we're just going to pass in. This API knows how to handle this type of information. All right, let's get the current equals data current. All right, now let's print the returned data. All right, so we're going to do a couple of F strings here. So I'm going to clone this 3 times, and we're going to say the first one we're going to do is place. We'll get the name. And then let's do the latitude, longitude. So we're going to say lat. We're going to get that to 2 digits, a 2-digit float. So lat 0.2f, that means it can be 2 digits. And this needs to be a colon here. So latitude converted to a 2-digit float. All right. And then we're going to say the same thing for longitude. So lon colon dot 2f. Okay. So this is missing a closing brace. There it is. Okay. That looks good to me. And then we're going to say current. And below that, we're going to say wind. All right. Now let's do our expression here. Current. And I'm just going to copy this. It's going to be temperature 2M Celsius. Or if you have the character, I have it on hand, you can just copy and paste it in. Okay, and then the same thing for the wind is going to be wind speed 10M. So inside these curly braces is going to be current, and then we're going to pass that in. And then we're going to say kilometers, km/h. And that needs to be outside of this brace. Sorry about that. Right there, just like that. Okay, now let's do our main entry point, and we'll see if we have any errors or any typos. I'm sure we do. Let's go ahead and say name. And name is going to be equal to main underscore underscore. Okay, so what we're going to do is city name underscore name is equal to sys.argv1 if length sys.argv is greater than 1 else London. Let's do a capital L there. And then let's say get weather city name. There we go. All right, so let's go ahead and give this a run. So I'm going to clear my output and I didn't mean to do dry run there. Get rid of dry run, press enter, and it's going to make an API call. And it looks like I've got a bit of an issue here. So let's go ahead. Type of argument method is not iterable. Let's go ahead and click on this and see what we did wrong here. Okay, we forgot to pass the open and closing braces here. Let's go ahead and try it again. And we're going to run it again. And now that was the only issue we had, which is a bit surprising, but we have the weather for London. So let's go ahead and run this for Manassas, which is a city in Virginia. That's not too far from where I am. And that pulls up the weather for Manassas. Now, there's a couple things here. Like if I run Gainesville, another city in Virginia, there's also Gainesville in Florida, which is probably what this is pulling up. So there's no way to specify the state. And if I look up this lat long, I'm sure that is not Gainesville, Virginia. Same thing goes for example, Midland. There's Midland, Texas, and there's Midland, Virginia. So it might be nice for you to expand this and allow the input for a state. So I would definitely take a look at that. Find a way to make this a little bit more expanded, and you'll take your Python coding skills to another level. All right, so that's all we're going to cover in this video. If you want to learn more Python, check out serveracademy.com/Python. We have a full course with interactive content like this little cannon shooting game here, which you can click on the homepage and try it without actually having to enter any accounts or register or anything like that. We are trying to bring Python to Server Academy and make it more interactive for you guys to learn. So check it out if you are interested in learning more Python, and I will see you in the next video.